Welcome into America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula and America's Medicare Associates. Securities offered through Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Advisory services offered through the Retirement Guys Formula, registered investment advisor. America's Retirement Headquarters, America's Medicare Associates, and the Retirement Guys Formula are separate and independent entities from Peak Brokerage Services, LLC. Welcome into and thanks so much for joining us here on America's Retirement Headquarters, home of the Retirement Guys Formula, America's Medicare Associates, and Retirement Tax Partners with Nolan Baker. Find out more about Nolan, his team at America's Retirement Headquarters at the website arhq.com. You can also give a call 419-794-3030. Once again, that's 419-794-3030. Today on the show, the 3 things your financial advisor should be doing. We have the story of a woman who regrets her frugal retirement, and how do you sanitize your portfolio from hidden fees? All this and more. But first, before we dive into any of it, just let me check in. Nolan, glad to be with you once again. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, doing wonderful. Just enjoying the summer, getting to play a little bit of golf, and hopefully each week my game gets a little bit better. But we see how Thursdays go.
It's one of those things where, making little strides here and there. The winners of the U.S. Open and the Masters, things like that, they don't do it on their own. They do it with the help of caddies. And so if you need someone to help you when it comes to your retirement getting a little bit better and ultimately getting to where you want to be, think of the team at America's Retirement Headquarters, kind of like the caddy, giving you the advice to guide you from here and there. And again, you can go and find out more, set up a time to speak with those caddies on the website arhq.com. I want to start the show off talking about something that has been dominating the news cycle pretty recently, the big, beautiful bill. Our nation is currently $37 trillion in debt. Some estimate the bill, which was recently passed, is going to add another $2.4 trillion to fund our deficit. The U.S. Treasury sells bonds, and one of the concerns right now is that fewer people and countries actually want to buy bonds because they believe it's a risky investment. So if people are about to go into retirement with a 20-year plan, how could this affect them? What steps can we take right now to protect our retirement money and our lifestyle?
Well, if you look at the big, beautiful bill, first of all, I think there are some great things that have come out of it. One is some of the positive impact that it has for retirees, specifically like the example of the deduction of Social Security, another way to help retirees keep more money in their pocket. I know Social Security taxation has been a big issue for a lot of our listeners and viewers for quite some time. So for those people, depending upon where their income level is, there's a little bit of a relief there in some of the Social Security taxation that they have. Great way to put money back in their pocket. And there has been a lot of debate about the big, beautiful bill, why people like it, why people hate it, how it's going to impact people's health insurance. And I know Scott's going to come on and talk in a future show about some of those changes that will impact the health insurance. And the reality is, whether you're at the 4th of July barbecue and it's fun to talk around the barbecue with your friends about the big, beautiful bill and debate the pros and cons, the reality is there's nothing you can do ultimately to control what is in that bill. The concern that I have is the $36 trillion of national debt and the reality that this is probably going to add more to our national debt. And the reality is you don't want to focus on things that you have little to no control over, such as the government spending or the bill that's been passed. What I want you to do is I want you to focus on the things that you have control over. And that's really the whole concept behind what we put together in the Retirement Team Action Plan. So within the Retirement Team Action Plan, what we do is we go through taxes, estate planning, asset protection, and money management. The 4 major areas that impact those clients that we work with. And we write down specific actionable items that people can take and they can implement. For example, you can control optimizing your portfolio through the investment selection process that you have. You can control the amount of taxes that you pay with moving money from things like taxable interest to, say municipal bonds, tax-deferred annuities, or other investments that provide potentially tax-free benefits. You can control how much of your legacy goes to your loved ones by having properly named beneficiary designations, by having the correct legal documents in place. You can control how much you get in bills for having the correct advantage or supplemental plan. So when we put that retirement team action plan together for folks, that's really designed to try to identify controllable items that they can take and put things in the right direction. And here we are just over halfway through the year. It's a good time just when you think of like dentist every 6 months having those dental checkups. I think it's a good idea to have a financial checkup. I recently met with a client, and the observation that we had was this particular client was paying taxes on a lot of money that they didn't have to. In fact, it's what I call voluntary taxation. So, on the surface, Pete was really excited in the fact that his money market account and his CD rates were, in that 4% range. And we haven't seen interest rates that high for quite some time. So I, on the surface, understand how that's good to have and take advantage of some of those higher interest rates that are out there. The problem is he's also in the 24% tax bracket. So even though he's not using that money, he's in turn paying taxes on it every year. And then if you subtract what inflation is out of that, he's really just barely treading water. Also, meeting with another client and looking at the situation, very similar with a large amount of money built up into that savings account. Another example is, shifting money over into municipal bonds is a great idea. Making sure that they max fund their Roth IRA each year, potentially moving, up to $8,000 a year into that tax-free bucket. We created the investment policy statement. And when we created the investment policy statement, what it showed is it showed how well is the portfolio constructed to try to achieve the highest potential return for the level of risk that we're willing to take. And, by making a few adjustments here and there, what it's able to do is it's able to try to put the portfolio and stress test it in different environments that really match the right recipe for what the client's trying to do. Having that in place also helps them become less of an emotional investor. Again, another area that you can control. It gives you a chance to check in on your risk level where you're at. So again, when you think about the big, beautiful bill that was recently passed, again, I would say there's, things that are good news that have come out of it, short term, that are things that retirees are going to like. Long term, is it going to come at a cost? Most likely. Who's going to pay that bill? Well, big, beautiful Americans are going to pay that bill. And so don't dwell upon something that's already happened. Don't dwell upon things that you have no or little control over. There are things that you can control. And again, I talked about avoiding paying taxes on money that you're not using. Save and invest in potentially tax-deferred or tax-free accounts. Don't rely upon the government to take care of you in the future. Stay disciplined to meet your goals and avoid becoming an emotional investor. And 5 is to check your risk score while the market is at or close to record highs. The retirement team action plan can do all of that for you. We put that together, of course, for folks when we take a look at their investment outcomes and help them create a better outcome for the rest of this year. And again, halfway through the year, it's a good idea to get that checkup.
The retirement team action plan can be made available to you by simply reaching out, setting up a time to speak with America's Retirement Headquarters. That number is 419-794-3030. You can also find out more about the Retirement Team Action Plan and set up a time to speak with them on the website, and that is ARHQ.com. So far, the entirety of President Trump's second term, he has been pressuring the Fed hard to lower interest rates. No movement as of yet. And there are some actually who believe rates should be raised. Here's financial commentator Peter Schiff on CNBC.
Lower interest rates are not the solution to our problem. They are the cause. The reason we have so many problems is because the Fed left rates so low for so long. So the solution involves much higher interest rates. Now, I understand that's going to be very painful given the economy that we've created built on a foundation of cheap money. It means stock prices come down, real estate prices go down, companies fail, there's going to be bankruptcies, there's going to be defaults, there's going to be a protracted recession, probably a much worse financial crisis than 2008. But all that has to happen because the alternative to that is even worse.
Interest rates, another one of those things that are beyond our control. So how do you prepare a retirement plan that can weather tough times and not just the good years?
But let me teach you how to build an all-weather portfolio. If I look at, living here in Northwest Ohio, what I would say is the routine's kind of the same every year. We get prepared for winter. I know, where to get the shovels out. I know to make sure that I have my salt stockpiled to be able to, put down when it snows. You kind of endure those cold months that you have. And for me, quite frankly, the only day I really want to see snow is on Christmas. But when we think, we can't handle it anymore in that cold weather in Northwest Ohio, the good thing is spring happens, right? We know it's time to spring clean the house. I can get the garage all cleaned out, start thinking about the time to be able to get the boat ready to put into water, get the golf clubs out, be able to do those things and be able to, take advantage of them. For me personally, my favorite time of the year is summer. I love the warm weather. I do love getting out on the boat. I love relaxing in the water at the pool, spending time with my wife and kids, soaking up the sunshine, if you will. And, living here in Northwest Ohio, it's pretty easy to kind of predict those seasonal changes that happens. They're very predictable. But, here's something that's not as predictable, and that's really what I want to talk to you about today, and that's predicting the weather is not as easy as predicting the economy and the stock market and knowing that they're going to go through those seasons. But what happens is the economy and the stock market do go through those seasons as well. There's going to be times when everything's really hot. We've had a hot stock market so far this year. We had a hot stock market last year and a hot stock market the year before. And there's other times when you feel like this storm's never going to pass. If you go back and you look at, a period of time when COVID was a shocking experience to the world. If you go back and you think of the environment of 2008, or even if you go back further and you think about 2000, 2001, 2002, you felt like those storms would never pass as well. The difference is knowing how and when to prepare for some of the market changes and being able to have a plan to do that. And that's really what I'm talking about here. It's called building an all-weather portfolio. Most of you probably have heard of asset allocation. And, asset allocation is the traditional approach. It's pretty common that I see that all the time. And so what asset allocation is taking and it's putting money into large, medium, small, international stocks, and then having a portion of money into bonds, which could be short, medium, and long-term bonds. And then your asset allocation will change over time, usually based upon when you want to retire. The problem with this is, like, if you go back a couple of years ago when interest rates were much lower than they were, those people who were close to or in retirement time and they had a retiree asset allocation, it meant that a large part of their portfolio was heavily invested in bonds. And so when the interest rates went up and those bond prices went down, those people in the traditional asset allocation approach really lost out. And they lost out not only because of the bonds going down, they lost out because of the asset allocation not having the equity exposure. And as I mentioned, for the past 2.5 years, we've had a hot equity market. And so in having a retiree asset allocation approach, really kind of missed out on some of those things that are out there. It's kind of like a buy it, set it, and forget it approach. It means that you're going to weather the good times and whether you're going to weather the bad times. And I think even for younger investors, an asset allocation approach may not make the most sense. Take my son who works here. He's 22. He has built up a great, portfolio in stocks. But it comes down to what his goal and his intent, right? He's got a new condo that he's purchasing. I imagine with that, it's going to come with some upcoming expenses over the next year or two and whatever improvements that he wants to do. So even though that he's young, and maybe he can afford to be in an all-equity position based upon where he's at in his life and what some of his goals are, he may want to have some money that's not exposed to what that market risk as well. So traditional asset allocation, think of it, it's like standing outside every single day of the year. Some days are warm, some days are beautiful, other days they're cold and they're stormy. And, just like most people who choose to come inside when a storm hits, and they wait for the sun to shine again, that's exactly what many investors do. And what that means is that when the storm hits, they're selling low, waiting till things get bright again, buying back in after the market's gone up. That can be a costly mistake. And so if you found yourself as an investor, if you've looked back over time and you said, you know what, I wish I wouldn't have done it at that point. I wish I would have done it differently. you might be impacted by the storms on Wall Street. And so that's why, again, this all-weather approach might be a little bit of a different approach to consider, taking a look at. Another thing is I think when you're looking at building an all-weather portfolio, you want to really kind of target the exact outcome that you want to have, the temperature, if you will. A lot of people will look at relative returns and they'll look at investment performance, and they'll think that maybe they're doing bad because they're only up 10% and the market's up 15. But you've got to take a look at what is the risk that you're taking and what is the temperature that you're trying to get towards. It's no different than feeling bad if you're down 20%, when if the market's down 30, maybe that's not necessarily a bad thing. So relative return means that you're concerned about how everyone else is doing. And in an all-weather approach, it's really like looking at things from a standpoint to determining what you're comfortable with. Going back to that weather analogy, it's like staying inside of your house and setting the thermostat to whatever temperature you're comfortable with. So you're less affected by what's happening outside, spring, summer, fall, or winter. The thermostat stays right at that 70 degree all year round. And the primary goal of building out that all-weather is to avoid those significant losses and those prolonged periods of poor performance. This strategy, I believe, really can work for most investors, and I really think it becomes even more relevant for those folks that are getting close to or in retirement time, because they don't have the luxury of time to ride those roller coaster rides anymore, especially when they need to turn their plan into more of an income plan. The process that we've put together over the years is called the independent income system. And within the independent income system, what we do is we take a look at different buckets of money that are designed to do different things. We would look at a bucket of money that's designed to provide reliable income. Interest rates right now are one of the highest rates we've seen in decades. And so you could take a portion of your money, you could remove it from the risk of stocks and bonds, and you can put it into a fixed account and have a set amount of money. If you do that, what you're going to have is you're going to have more predictable income, right? More consistency in the portfolio. And if you're putting it in something that's a fixed investment, you're also going to have less volatility. So you're narrowing down the range of the ups and downs within your portfolio. When we do independent portfolio analysis for folks, we can do this analysis and we can take a look at like how much is the ups and downs within a portfolio. And that would tell you, how big and down the roller coaster ride of your portfolio can go. And so building that all-weather portfolio, what you want to do is try to drive down the standard deviation that you have, the maximum ups, the maximum down, to get to something that's more consistent. Adding into the portfolio, you could add in some other things that could help with downside risk management. There are financial products that will reduce and or eliminate some or all of the downturn in the stock market. And that way, if and when there is a downturn in the market, you're not going to be as affected by the complete loss of when the market goes down. In addition to that, it allows you to participate either up into a cap or a percentage of the gain when the market goes up. These type of things can help reduce some of the volatility that you have. We utilize in different accounts what I would refer to as circuit breakers. So once a week in some of our strategies, we're looking at different moving averages of the market. And when the market starts to go down and it reaches different levels, we would begin to reduce our equity exposure. That way it doesn't continue on that roller coaster ride down. And then as it goes back up and it reaches different levels, those would be indications on when to get back in. So there's pros and cons to any investment approach that you're looking for. The primary benefit that I'm talking about here is those people who want to avoid significant and prolonged losses. That is the goal of the all-weather portfolio. The trade-off of that is if you have a rising straight-up market, you could miss out because our strategy usually doesn't involve having all of the money at risk, especially for somebody that's close to or in retirement time. We want to try to capture as much of that and optimize the portfolio to try to get the maximum level of a return for the level of risk that you're taking. But again, what we're trying to do is we're trying to set that comfortable 70 degrees all year long. So you're going to be protected from some of those big storms. You could miss out on the 85-degree beautiful weather one day. But the bottom line is, if you're interested in maybe a different approach, you're interested in learning about that all-weather investment strategy, we would be happy to put together an independent portfolio analysis for you and kind of walk you through what we see are the strengths of what you're doing today. Maybe there could be some areas for an improvement and help reduce some of the volatility. And while the market's at a record high, now's the time that you kind of want to have your all-weather strategy in place, not wait until something happens. And I think with, again, the timing of where we're at in the market, it's a good time to consider that all-weather strategy.
As we spoke about earlier, there are so many things right now that are beyond our control. But if you can have consistency, I think that's something a lot of us are looking for. Consistency, especially when it comes to your retirement. It's worth taking a look at. The independent income system is what the team at America's Retirement Headquarters helps people out with. To find out more, to set up a time to start developing your own personalized plan, go to arhq.com or schedule a time. Give it a call, 419-794-3030. Nolan, I read an article recently at gobankingrates.com that told the story of Agnes. She saved as much as she could for retirement and now has more money than she knows what to do with. Sounds great, right? But at age 79, Agnes, well, she has regrets. She realizes that she missed out on opportunities to spend and make memories in her younger years. Is this something that you see? How do you help clients save for retirement, but at the same time help them live in the moment when they get there?
Well, let's talk about how to get comfortable to spend in retirement time and make sure that you're being able to do the things that you want to do while being able to address the issue to make sure that you have enough money that, lasts the rest of your lifetime. I think what happens is, we get comfortable. For most Americans, we get up, we go to work, and, every 2 weeks we have that direct deposit put into our bank account. And then all of a sudden we transition into retirement time. And now you just have a pile of money, and picking at the pile of money is not really a plan to get you comfortable to be able to spend in retirement time. So getting comfortable to spend in retirement time, especially after a lifetime of savings, can be surprisingly hard. And it's also going to be based upon, who you are, what type of values you were brought up with, what is inside of you. So to shift that mindset to a structure with your finances to feel confident about spending without fear of running out of money, what I want you to do is, first and foremost, is I want you to create a retirement spending plan. And I'm not talking a budget here. When you're looking at the spending plan, what I want you to do is I want you to identify what is the minimum monthly income needs that you have. So when you're thinking about the essentials, you're thinking about your food, your housing, your healthcare, your insurances, the type of things that you need to have that are essential in your household. You want to make sure that those type of things are covered from reliable income. So that's things that are not invested in stocks and bonds that have risk associated with it. Your stock and bond market money is more so designed to cover some of the lifestyle things that you want. So when you're thinking about your travel, your hobbies, your entertainment, that's really where you're going to have your stocks and bonds and more of your long-term growth part of the portfolio. You also can think about, in your spending plan, if there's certain goals or objectives that you have, such as, making sure that you protect income for your surviving spouse if there's a premature death. If your desire is to put some money aside for grandkids for their future college, if there's a charity that's important to you, those type of things in that particular bucket are your legacy planning checklist. You want to use a withdrawal strategy, and you really want to stick with that withdrawal strategy. We've most of the time commonly heard of what's called the 4% rule in our industry. And, the 4% rule in our industry is if you take your bucket of money and you pull 4% out of it and adjust it for inflation over time, it should be able to make sure that you have enough income forever. The problem that I've seen in 30 years of being in the business is people will oftentimes set up that plan with the 4% rule, but then, all of a sudden they decide to take a vacation and take their entire family on a vacation that they've always dreamed about. That's wonderful. That's great. But is that taking now more money than what the 4% rule is? Or they're going to go ahead and, buy some more vehicles, or they're going to go ahead and help their son out who's in a financial hardship situation, or help their child start a business. Taking those excess withdrawal strategies and not sticking with that withdrawal strategy could end up being a costly mistake. In the independent income system, it's a good idea to have a bucket of money designed for an emergency, and that money is over and above that 4% withdrawal rule. And it's also okay to be adjustive, to when the markets are doing good, maybe spend more, and when the markets are doing poor, maybe those are the years that you hold off on some of those extra projects that you want to do. So you want to secure that essential income. That is sources like your Social Security, pensions. If you have a gap in there, you want to shift money from the risky money over into things like annuities. You can use CDs. You can use other investments that provide more fixed income. So if you have enough income, and you have enough income that's going to protect your minimum, and you know what's coming in, I think now you're going to start to feel a lot more comfortable about being able to spend in retirement time. So it's kind of helping you start to reframe your mind shift to be able to spend more. I had a client who had come into the office. We had this conversation about spending, and they had mentioned to me that they had taken a great trip last year. In fact, I think they went to Aruba. And I said, where's the trip planned this year? And she had mentioned to me that, because we did one last year, we're probably going to wait a couple more years before we did another one. And I said, well, why is that? And she said, well, I just don't want to spend too much. In looking at it, one of the things that I told her is, hey, another thing to think about is it's okay to spend your profits, try not to spend your principal. If we looked at your investment accounts over the last year, you were X dollars ahead of what your goal was. So again, in the last year, the stock market's been pretty cooperative. She's in an excess situation. She could take a little bit more money and she could spend it right now because her profits are ahead. So again, shifting the concept to spend profits, not your principal, will also help you. And again, if you have that reliable income set up over here, then your fund money bucket, you'll be able to look at it a little bit differently. So you kind of want to track your spending. I really wouldn't say get obsessed over your spending as well. I think every 6 months, it's a good idea to maybe have a checkup to see how well you're progressing on your overall performance. I would never recommend taking a look at things on a weekly or daily basis. It's just going to lead to more anxiety and short-term emotional decisions as well. Then the final thing that you can do is you can stress test your plan. Working with a financial professional, we can take a look at things like what if inflation goes up or the market crashes. And all of these things are going to help you build that confidence to get you comfortable to be able to spend more in retirement time.
It is the number one concern among retirees and pre-retirees. Do I have enough to get me through my retirement? And if you can put together a plan to address some of those concerns, you can focus on not just having the means, having the income to take care of those, but also making those memories, which I think seems pretty critical when it comes to retirement, being able to enjoy yourself. 419-794-3030 is how you get the team at America's Retirement Headquarters to assist you with that. Start developing that plan. 419-794-3030. Or you can go to the website, and that is ARHQ.com. Now, Nolan, you've talked to people who come in for second opinions because, they're not happy with their current advisor, usually due to lack of results or poor service. For some people, seeking another advisor's advice is a challenging step to take for a myriad of reasons. Can you give us some red flags that maybe it's time for someone to switch to someone new, especially during periods of market volatility?
When do you know it's time you should fire your financial advisor? And, maybe that sounds harsh, but the reality is not every advisor-client relationship is meant to last forever. And frankly, some might be staying in situations that are actually hurting their financial future. The good news is if you have a financial advisor, I think first and foremost, that puts you ahead of a majority of people. There are a lot of people that don't even work with a financial advisor. And the second thing that I would say is I know there are a lot of great quality financial advisors that are out there, But I've also been, talking with folks a lot that have been coming in the office. They've been kind of looking for second opinions because they're not happy with their current advisor. And usually it really comes down to two big issues. One is they're not seeing the results they expected, or the service isn't quite, what they were looking and what they thought they were paying for. A perfect example is I had a client that had recently come in, and we did the independent portfolio analysis, and we kind of looked at the money she had in her taxable account. We looked at the money she had in her Roth IRA account, and we looked at the money she had in her traditional IRA. And in all three accounts, she had the exact same investment strategy. And what's unique about that is the same approach in each account really didn't make a whole lot of sense. One, it was creating excess taxes that she was paying on the dividends inside of her taxable account. Two, she was missing out on the growth potential of the tax-free account, which would be the Roth IRA. And three, she could incorporate what I would refer to as circuit breaker technology, being able to have a more tactical or asset managed approach inside of the IRA. So that is an area where I think, somebody is not getting the highest level. Maybe, they've got a good retirement, but they're looking to go from good to great. Here's the thing. For a lot of people, switching advisors, it can feel overwhelming, maybe a little bit scary. And I get it. You've shared your most personal financial details with this person. You've trusted them with your life savings, your retirement dreams, maybe even your kids' colleges. So how do you know when it's time to make a change? And how do you figure out who to pick? I've identified a couple of red flags, and then I'm going to give you a couple of ideas on what to look for when choosing a financial advisor. So I think the red flag number one is what I would refer to as a communication blackout. What I mean by that is you've purchased some type of financial product, and I have to ask you, when's the last time you've heard from your advisor? I don't mean just a generic market update email that they went out to their entire list. I mean, when is the last time you've got personalized communication about your portfolio, about your goals, and about your numbers? If your advisor only surfaces when there's something that they want to sell you, or there's something new, or if it feels like you're bothering them when you give them a call with questions, that's a problem. And that's a red flag, especially in volatile markets. You really want to have great communication, both coming from and going to the advisor that you're working with. Your advisor really should be proactive during those uncertain period of times. Red flag number two is you need a specialist, but you've got a generalist. And there was a conference that I was at. It was up in Detroit. It's always stuck out to me because of the fact that the gentleman had a business card and it folded open and it rolled down because he had every single thing that he did inside of there. And ultimately, he did everything from college funding to debt reduction. I think he could help you increase your FICO score, to investing in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds, and managed accounts, and life insurance, and disability, and on and on and on. And really what he had is he was just a generalist in all of those categories. And, when you start out, maybe that worked out just fine. Maybe you just needed basic investment advice, and that's what you needed. But as life changes, as an example, as you transition from your working years into retirement time, maybe you've started a business and your business has grown bigger than the relationship that you have today. Maybe you're dealing with things like stock options from your work, or what to do with the stock in your 401k, and needing to understand things like net unrealized appreciation. Maybe you've inherited property. Maybe you're going through a divorce, or you're just getting ready to retire. Those are the type of things that I think you really want to kind of have a specialist in place. You want to be careful about an advisor who needs to go onto Google and Google everything while you're sitting there and says, maybe that's not just my area. It's time to find somebody who specializes in where you're at in the phase of your life. And, don't get me wrong, there's no advisor that knows everything. A great advisor, in my opinion, is going to be an advisor who surrounds himself with a team to be able to collaborate and bring in into these different situations. Red flag number 3 is your financial plan is written in ancient Egyptian. And maybe that's an exaggeration, right? But if you walk away from meetings with your advisor and you feel even more confused than walking in, there's really something wrong. Your financial plan shouldn't require a PhD to understand it. Really, you should be able to explain your basic investment strategy to a friend over coffee. You should understand why your money is invested the way that it is, what the risks are that you're taking, and how the strategy connects to your unique goals. If your advisor just talks in jargon terms, shows you charts that might as well be in hieroglyphics, you can't get straight answers to your questions, and they're maybe not doing the job that they needed to, really that is another red flag. So red flag number 4 is the fee mystery. Pop quiz. How much are you paying for your investments in total? Not just the management fee. I mean, all of the fees, the expense ratio of your mutual funds, your transaction costs, your administrative fees. What is the all-in total expense? If you can't answer that question, or if your advisor gets squirmish when you ask about fees, that's another massive red flag. And here's what really gets me fired up is when advisors aren't transparent about how they're getting paid. They're getting commissions from the products that they sell you, or they charge in management fees. Do they get bonuses to steer you in from one product to the other? Are there conflicts of interest that you should be aware of? You have every right to understand the total cost of working with your advisor. And if they can't or won't give you a clear written breakdown, then find somebody who will. Red flag number 5 is the trust factor has left the building. And that may be a hard one to quantify there, but it might be the most important. Do you trust your advisor? Do you feel confident in their recommendations? Do you sleep well at night, knowing how they're managing your money? Or do you find yourself second guessing some of the choices that they gave you? Are you still losing sleep worrying about do you have enough? Is your financial future going to be okay? Do you have a plan in place to make you confident with the decisions that are being made on how your portfolio is put together? Feeling like you really understand your goals and your situation. Trust is really everything in a relationship. And if it's gone, pretty much everything else falls apart. Maybe they've made promises that they didn't keep. Maybe they pushed you into investments that didn't really necessarily line up with what your risk tolerance is or what your goals are. Maybe they just didn't seem to really care about the success as much as what you care about. Whatever the reason, if you've lost confidence in your advisor, it's time to have an honest conversation about whether that relationship can ever be repaired or whether it's time to kind of move on. Red flag number 6 is they're missing an action during volatile market times. And that's a big one here, folks. When the market gets choppy, like it has been lately, that's the time you need your advisor most. That's the time when experience and guidance should really shine. If your advisor disappears during market downturns, or your strategy during volatile times is to just tell you to hang in there and ride it out, you're not maybe getting the total value that you're paying for. A good advisor doesn't just manage your money, they manage your emotions, and a good advisor is going to help you get through those difficult times and turn challenges into opportunity, turn fear and panic into finding out where there are strategies to take advantage of those opportunities. They communicate during those clear, volatile times with clear messages. So, looking to switch advisors isn't an easy decision. It's not one to take lightly, but staying with the wrong advisor can cost you more in the long run than the temporary inconvenience of making a change. If you're recognizing your situation has any one of these red flags, I think that it's time to really begin to look for, choosing a new advisor. When you're looking for choosing a new advisor, you want to look for asking references. You want to have a couple of those references would be client references. A couple of those references should be professional references. It's important that you call those references. When you call those references, I think the questions that you want to ask is, tell me a little bit about your experience in working with your advisor. Tell me a little bit about how the communication is. Tell me a little bit about, when you request service needs, how those type of things are handled. Talk to the professionals that they work with. If you bring in an attorney, if you bring in a CPA, how are they working together to provide you the best possible outcomes? Ask about the fees. Ask about how they charge fees for service. Do they charge you a flat fee for consulting advice? Are they paid based upon the assets under management? Are they paid from the financial products that they sell you? Knowing what those fees and expenses are, and again, having a clear understanding of what those fees and expenses are, is a good way for you to make a good decision if that's a great relationship as well. Ask about the ways that they are going to provide financial planning advice for you. What process are they going to go through to develop some type of plan? Are they using planning software? And if so, what is that planning software telling you about what the outcomes are, and how are they going to try to use that software, use technology to increase the odds of your success? If you're working and you're looking at all those, then you also want to talk to them about what their financial background is. I myself have been in the business a little over 30 years, and I can say that experience matters in times that it's dealing with your life savings. I know as a younger advisor, I didn't have as much experience. I had a college degree, but things you learn over time as well. So again, ask a little bit about their financial background. What professionals do they work with that they turn to in different times? How do they keep up with the ever-changing environment that's in the financial services industry? Ask about how many clients they have, how many clients that they, take on. Those are the type of things I think that you really want to kind of walk through when you're looking, is it time to switch advisors? And if it's time, if you want a second opinion, we'd love to sit down and have a conversation with you, have a visit, and just see if maybe we could be the right fit for being part of our family here at America's Retirement Headquarters.
At the end of the day, you need to ask yourself the question, your investment accounts, your retirement accounts, who are they benefiting the most if you are not getting value for what you are giving to your current advisor? Another great reason to go ahead and perhaps seek that second opinion. The team at America's Retirement Headquarters, they're available to give you that second opinion or a first opinion if you don't have that plan in place yet. 419-794-3030 is the phone number to get started, or you can go to the website, find out more, schedule a time there at arhq.com. It's kind of hard to believe this, but it's been close to 2 years since the passing of singer Jimmy Buffett. But there's now a new legal war being waged over his $275 million estate. Buffett's widow, Jane, is suing to have the co-trustee of the estate removed, claiming that he is hostile and not acting in her best interests. It stems from being told that she's to receive less than $2 million annually. He's filed his own lawsuit in retaliation. This all sounds like rich people problems, and especially because someone as famous as Jimmy Buffett, it's in the spotlight. But it underscores the need for careful legacy planning, no matter what the size of an estate is. So, Nolan, I have to ask, how do you work to help prevent future challenges?
Well, how to prevent inheritance conflict, I think, is an important thing that all families want to do. And I think everybody listening has probably seen at one point or maybe even gone through their own experience when somebody in the family passed away and then all of a sudden it got into some type of inheritance conflict. I was joking during the break in the fact that I said just have your last check bounce and problem solved. And, if life was that easy, that might be a solution to it. But I think there are a lot of people that do want to, create a lasting impact. People that want to do something bigger than just themselves, whether it's helping out children, grandchildren, maybe a charitable cause that's important to them. And I can tell you from my own experience, growing up, I grew up in a small town here in Northwest Ohio. At the young age, I knew I wanted to get into the financial services business. My dad's best friend was a financial advisor, and a month after I turned 18, I got licensed. At the same time, I went to college here in Toledo and got a degree in financial management. And it was just at that early phase of getting licensed that unfortunately it was a Thursday night at 49 years old. My dad had a heart attack on the golf course and passed away. That it was kind of involved in that family conflict, because what had happened is my parents had got divorced a couple of years before. My dad had recently gotten remarried. Being only 49, I don't think he gave a whole lot of thought to what if something happened to me. I know he was in the process of doing some estate planning, and he had some estate plans in place. I just don't know if the estate plans were exactly what, Dad wanted. And it took me, I think, as a young 21-year-old at that time to kind of grow up over the years and try to realize that I wish there would have been better communication, a better plan in place that could have prevented, some of the conflict that's happened. You flash that forward even further. In my situation, losing my dad, my dad had a brother, and we a couple of years ago lost our grandfather and grandmother as well. And again, I don't know necessarily if their wishes were carried out and put together exactly how they want. You see this happen, with these famous people, and you think, okay, well, I'm not rich and famous like these other people. But I think in everybody's situation, you need to take some steps to prevent some of this inheritance conflict that's out there. So number one, what I want you to do is I want you to have a clear, legally valid estate plan. You'd be surprised at, I think, the number of people that I talk to that, don't have their basic estate plan put into place. There's a lot of great services. There's services online. There are local attorneys that you can get together with. And I think one of the things is having that clear estate plan put in place is the first step to kind of help reduce that potential family conflict that you have. Number two is you want to communicate your intentions openly and also explain any type of unequal distribution. Again, I'll use myself as an example. My wife and I, we have a will. We also established a trust when our kids were little. Our primary intent of establishing a trust when our kids were little was to deal with issues of how to help them grow into be young men later on in life. If mom and dad passed on early, we put some people in charge of helping them manage their money. We flash forward to today. Today, I have a very successful financial services business and a couple other businesses that we have. I have a son that has been in the business with me now for 6 years. My other son in a couple of weeks is moving down to Florida to go to college at Florida Atlantic. He wants to go into the real estate field, and we'll see where those doors open up for him in the future. But, now we had our estate plans updated this year. The reason we had our estate plans updated this year is because of the fact that, again, our kids are now adults. I'm proud to say I have 2 Eagle Scouts. So I think our kids are much more prepared for life. I have a son that's been in the business and understands it for the past 6 years. And again, I have another son that I think at some point might be involved in some aspect of a business, but we'll see what that looks like. My wife and I, we sat down with our children and we talked about our intentions with our estate plan. We talked about our intentions with the business and, dealing with the possible inequitable distribution of like the business. If my son stays into the business, how do we make that fair to my other son? And so getting them all together and having that communication with them, if something happens to me, something happens to mom and dad, I think we've done the best that we can to try to communicate openly what our intentions are to help out with that. Number 3 is you want to consider who you pick as your executor or trustee. Don't make that decision lightly. You might have 2 kids and maybe you're just going to pick the one kid because they're the oldest, or you're going to pick the one child because they tended to be the smartest with money over time. But just know, by doing that, that naturally presents a potential conflict, because that executor or that trustee is going to have a lot of power and ultimately distributing that inheritance and, getting those things done. Sometimes it may be better off to have a neutral third person. Maybe you want to have the law firm or the attorney consider having them help out in some type of capacity inside of there, because who you pick as your executor and trustee matters. Number 4 is avoid in probate. And by avoiding probate, you want to use the tools that can help you accomplish that. In many situations, it's by having things like I mentioned earlier, like my wife and I, how we have a trust. We have our house inside of the trust, and therefore it's designed to avoid probate. You can have things like named beneficiaries. So if you look at your financial documents, like your 401k, your life insurance, your annuities, those type of assets can have named beneficiaries. Here's a trap. Here's a mistake, though. A lot of people think, well, I have a will, I have a trust, so everything is taken care of. I will avoid probate. And that's not always true. Not everything goes through your estate, nor do you always want everything to go through the estate. When you think about the word estate, that's a process that typically involves the court system and the probate, ultimately to transfer assets from one person's name to the other. It's the intentions of what you wish to accomplish with the assets that you own. In many cases, you want to try to avoid probate, avoid those attorney fees, and avoid those excess costs that you have through properly named beneficiary forms. So what I want you to do is make sure that you check the beneficiary designations on your form. Next is you want to keep your documents updated. In keeping your documents updated, again, I'm a good example. I originally established my estate plans with my wife when my children were little. Now that my children are adults, life has changed a little bit. We went ahead and we got our documents updated. And the last thing that I would tell you in, how to prevent inheritance conflict is work with an attorney that specializes or focus in the elder care field. That attorney typically can guide you through this process and help you out with it. If you're not sure what the next step is, what we've done is we put together the ultimate guide to estate planning. You can get that if you go over to our website at www.arhq.com. You can click on that ultimate estate planning checklist. We'll kind of walk you through it, and we'll be able to share with you our experiences that we've seen over the years and help you make sure you check the boxes. And then if you need a couple different recommendations for attorneys and you wanted to get some legal documents put in place, we can also help pull in some of the professionals that we work with. We're here to help you prevent and reduce that potential family conflict, and getting something put together before something happens is one of the keys in that situation.
Just like in retirement, I think people's desires for their legacy, it will differ from person to person. Everyone's situation is different, but one thing I think everyone wants to avoid is creating that family conflict unnecessarily, but it happens day in and day out from the lack of a plan. The ultimate estate planning checklist, like Nolan said, available. Go to the website, schedule a time there, and put together that process. ARHQ.com or give a call, 419-794-3030. As always, want to thank you for joining us here on America's Retirement Headquarters. It is the home of the Retirement Guys formula, Retirement Tax Partners, and America's Medicare Associates. Hope you have a great week ahead of you. Nolan, appreciate the time as always. Hope you have a great week as well. As we wrap up, I'm going to leave you with the final word.
I hope everybody enjoys the beautiful weather, enjoy the beautiful week. Just remember, America's Retirement Headquarters, we're here for your entire retirement.
America's Retirement Headquarters is located at 1700 Woodlands Drive in Maumee, Ohio. You can reach them by calling 419-794-3030 or online at americasretirementheadquarters.com. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed should not be considered investment advice or recommendation to buy or sell any financial vehicle. Investments can fluctuate and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Nolan Baker is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency and does not provide legal or tax advice. Please consult with your attorney, accountant, and or tax advisor for advice concerning your particular circumstance. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Nolan Baker, Ohio Insurance License Number 27787.